Welcome to the ShadowBear Story Sessions. This is a podcast about insanely, brutally dark, and hilarious old folk tales. We're going through the original versions of Grimm's fairy tales, not the cleaned-up, Disneyfied versions. I don't know if I can say the name of that company. They're not gonna sue me. They're too scared. No, I shouldn't bring that karma on myself. But we're going through the dark original versions of fairy tales, going through Grimm's fairy tales, and today's tale is a lesser-known tale, I think. I haven't read it before, titled The Carnation. We begin. A long time ago, there lived a king who never wanted to marry. I wonder what his plan is for succession. Now, one day he stood at a window and watched some people entering the church. Among them was a maiden who was so beautiful that he immediately abandoned his resolution. All right, that's just bad storytelling. Guys, you establish one thing about a person and then immediately refute that one thing. So the king, I guess, is a waffling, flip-flopping, weak-minded person. That's all I can be left to assume. Going forward, we continue. So he had the maiden summoned to him and chose her for his wife. Also, it's just because she was hot? Were there no hot people in this kingdom other than this one girl? It also creeps me out, the word maiden, because it's kind of vague age-wise. Like, I want to be clear that this is a woman here. Maiden kind of is that open to interpretation. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt here and hopefully assume that this king is not a creep. We continue. After 1 year had passed, she gave birth to a prince, and the king didn't know whom to ask to be the godfather. Finally, he said, "The first man I meet, no matter who it is, I'll ask him to be the godfather." This king is terrible at decision-making in general, very impulsive, not thinking anything through or giving forethought to literally any situation whatsoever. It bodes very poorly for this kingdom and the people who he rules over. If this is how he goes about deciding his wife and the godfather of the prince, who presumably is going to be a pretty influential person in the prince's life and the kingdom in general, this is risky. This king is playing with fire. This king sounds like a drug addict, to be honest. We continue. He went out, and the first person he met was a poor old man, and he asked him to be the godfather. The poor man agreed. I mean, yeah, he's the king. Why wouldn't he agree? This is a huge stroke of good luck for this poor old man. The poor man agreed, but requested that he be the only one to carry the child into the church, that the church was to be locked, and that nobody be allowed to observe the ceremony. Okay, call it off, king. For sure, call it off. Be like, okay, you're not going to be the godfather. Then why would you ever agree to that? You don't know this man. You don't know this poor old man. You just found an old man on the street and was like, hey, you want to be godfather? And he's like, cool, let me go into a church and lock it and be alone with the child. That's the only way I agree to this, is if I get to be entirely alone with your baby. There's no way it's going to be good. I mean, it's folktales, so who the hell knows what's going to happen. But in life, there's no way this is a good thing. But he's still in control. He's still the king. You don't have to agree to this. You didn't make any legal binding agreements. Even if you did, you don't got to let some old man have your child alone in a church or any building or room for that matter. Just call it off. But guessing he's not going to. We continue. All this was granted, because of course it was. However, the king had an evil, curious gardener. All right. I love these totally random folktale curveballs that just come out of absolute oblivion. All right, an evil, curious gardener. Talk about two random adjectives to ascribe to someone. And when the old man carried the child into the church, he sneaked after him and hid himself among the benches. It doesn't sound evil. It sounds like he's looking out for this kid and doesn't want to leave him alone with an old man. We continue. Soon he watched the old man carrying the child before the altar and blessing him. The old man seemed to be someone who understood secret powers, and he gave the child the gift of realizing everything he wished for. You know what? I admit when I'm wrong. Gotta hold my hands up. Pretty good guy to have be the godfather of your child. Turns out. I mean, would have appreciated an explanation, maybe, about what you're going to do and that you're going to give a child these secret powers. But there's no guarantee this was going to be good. Also doesn't seem to be any reason why this needs to be done in private, or why the poor old man needed to be weird and cryptic about requesting this, or why the old man is a just poor old man on the street to begin with, if he's capable of all this stuff. Who's he? What's his story? What's his background? What's his deal? Can he not use the powers, but he just understands them? It says he understood secret powers. Many questions. A lot of questions. Let's see what, if any of them, will be answered. We continue. The Evil Gardener. That's just a ridiculous title for a person. The Evil Gardener. Also, don't just call him an evil gardener. Let us figure out that he's evil. Is he gardening at all either? He hasn't done any gardening. I guess they have to justify why he's involved in any capacity. Not that this really does in any way. We continue. The evil gardener immediately thought how advantageous it would be for him if he had the child. Yeah, I guess. So one day, when the queen went for a walk and carried the child in her arm, the gardener tore it away from her, smeared her mouth with the blood of a slaughtered chicken, and accused her of killing and eating her child in the garden. What the actual fuck? No. You can't be getting away with that. What do you mean accusing her of... He's got the baby right there in his hands, right? Everyone sees the baby is still there and not eaten. Because if he accuses her, then presumably he's just yelling it and pointing at her. So he's got the baby. Doesn't say he hid the baby and then came back and she was still there. That makes no sense, the logistics of this plan. We continue. So the king had her thrown into prison. That stings. While the gardener sent the child far away to a forester in the woods. Why? Okay, this is a thing that has happened multiple times in folktales where an innocent mother is accused of eating their child. I don't know why this is such a common trope in old folktales. If it was a common thing that happened at a time in history, that this is something that could be so readily believed. But this happens a lot. This happens a surprising amount in these old folktales. And it's very concerning how quickly and readily these accusations are believed. Every time, every single time. No one questions it. No one doubts the accusation in the slightest. Even when the logistics of how this accusation could be realized make no sense, have absolutely no logic to them. This is a gardener. Why would you believe the gardener? Why would you not believe the queen? She just got super hungry in the garden and was like, I'm gonna eat my baby? No, that doesn't happen ever. She's a queen. she's got food. Just be like, no, the evil, curious gardener. What is curious? He's not curious. He's just flat out evil. I guess he was curious, as they needed that to explain why he followed the old man into the church. Anyway, so frustrating with motivation. I guess, yeah, people don't believe women in history. I guess that's a very real thing, and these folktales bear that out. All right, so this kid is now sent away to a forester in the woods. He was supposed to raise the child, and it was there that the prince learned all about hunting. Moreover, the forester had a beautiful daughter by the name of Lisa. First character to get a name in this entire story. And the two young children became very fond of one another. Lisa revealed to him that he was a prince and that he had the power to realize every wish he made. Shouldn't he have realized that on his own at some point? It's like, anytime I want something, it happens. That's something that you'd recognize pretty quickly. It's like, you want dinner, or you want that sweet, or he's probably a great hunter. Literally every time he tries to hunt, nailed it. Someone's got deer running at him into his arrows. This is, yeah, don't know why he needed little Lisa to tell him, but maybe he's not the smartest. Maybe he's a dummy who just lucks into everything. There's a lot of dummies who luck into stuff in folktales as well. We continue. After some time had passed, the gardener came to the forester, and when the prince saw him, he immediately wished the gardener to become a poodle, and his dear Lisa a carnation. So he's a psychopath. So this boy's a psychopath. I guess. I guess she explained to him the gardener as well, and like told him when the gardener showed up, it's like, hey, that's the guy who kidnapped you and sent you here. Although ultimately, is that so bad of a thing? Because he met Lisa, who has to be important because she just got turned into a carnation. It's called the Carnation, and she's the only character with a name. So I'm guessing she's going to be pretty crucial. She already is pretty crucial to what's happening here. We continue. So Lisa is now a carnation, and the gardener is a poodle. That's fun. We continue. He stuck her on himself, and the poodle had to run alongside the prince. Then he went to the father's court. What about the forester? What's going on with the forester? Just left him behind and threatened him like, don't tell anyone. Who knows? Then he went to his father's court, where he entered the royal service as a hunter. And soon he became the king's favorite hunter because he could shoot any kind of animal in the forest. Yeah, why not just say, like, hey, I'm your son and I escaped? Would have been pretty simple, pretty easy to do that. And you could prove it by manifesting anything you realize, because they know that. Clearly they know that. But did they tell the child? That went unexplained, actually. If they told the parents, if the old man actually told the king and the queen that the kid was capable of doing all that stuff. Because the gardener knew because he saw it. I guess that means the old man was narrating the ceremony as he was doing it, saying like, oh, this will make you be able to realize everything. It wasn't just straight up a ceremony. Again, lots of questions that we don't have answers to. We continue, and he's now a hunter, and just like impressing his dad and not telling him that he's his son for unknown reasons. Maybe he's trying to earn his respect first. You know what? Good for you. Good for you, little boy, whose, again, name we don't know. We continue. All the prince had to do was to wish, and the animals came running to him. Spot on. I was totally right. Despite all the services he rendered the king, the prince did not ask to be compensated. He only asked for a room for himself that he kept locked, and he insisted on taking care of meals for himself. There's people just like demanding to be locked in rooms. That should tip him off. It's like, oh, this guy likes being locked in rooms too, and he's about the same age as my son. Maybe he picked that up from that old man. Where's the old man? That begs the question, what happened to the old man? He's the godfather. He's magic. Presumably he could have done something to find this boy when he disappeared. Did he just wander away? He's godfather. You got to keep an eye on the god. Keep him around, if you're the king. Hoping he makes a return. I doubt he's going to. We continue. All this seemed strange to his fellow hunters. The fact that he locked himself away. Especially his refusal to receive wages. So that one of his fellow comrades followed him and looked through the keyhole. All at once, he saw the new hunter sitting at a table next to a beautiful maiden, who was his dear Lisa, whom he changed into her natural form whenever he was in the room. She kept him company whenever they were alone, and whenever he went out, she became a carnation again and stood in a glass of water. Pretty sad life for Lisa here. So she reveals the truth to him, and he rewards her by keeping her in a locked room and not even a human half the time, or most of the time, I guess. Why couldn't he have just left her? I'll take care of you and give you riches and ask for a wage and to be compensated for all the value that I'm providing to give you and us a better life. Instead of hey, let's just go be in a room, a locked room, just us two. She lived in the forest and was married to, or not married to, but clearly in love with someone who's capable of providing literally anything at any time. That was her life. And now she's a fucking flower most of the day. That's brutal. Again, this is a real rough one for women, as are most of them, but this one is yikes. We continue. The hunters thought that he must have a great amount of wealth. Why is that the assumption when they see this lady here? They know he doesn't. Oh, I guess. Okay, never mind. They thought he must have a great amount of wealth, obviously just because he refuses to take a wage. Just oh, he don't need money. He's got plenty of money. My bad. I'll admit that one. Hunters thought he must have a great amount of wealth and broke into his room when the prince went out hunting. However, they found absolutely nothing, only the carnation on the windowsill. Since the flower was so beautiful, they brought it to the king, who became so very fond of it that he demanded it from the hunter. However, the young hunter refused to give it to him, even for all the money in the world, because the flower was his beautiful Lisa. Finally, when the king insisted on having it, the hunter revealed everything that had happened, and that he was his son. When the king heard this, he rejoiced with all his heart. The queen was released from the prison. Oh, yeah! So he knew all of this. He knew his mom was rotting in prison and had been in prison for so long and was still content to carry on this ruse for no reason, really. There's no reason why he didn't just immediately tell him, I'm your son and this is my wife and we're back now and we're in love and I can do anything and I'm the best hunter in the world and let's all be a happy family. No. He was I'm going to imprison my wife in my room and in the form of an inanimate object for most of the time. Was he doing it to be like his dad? It's hey, you imprisoned mom. I want to feel what that's like for a little while. I'm going to imprison Lisa. But poor Lisa, man. Can you imagine how stressful that was when they're fighting over this flower? And just I could be literally crushed at any moment because I am a flower and nobody knows that I'm a flower. That would be terrifying. My God, man. Come on, Prince, unnamed Prince. If you really cared about your wife, you wouldn't turn her into a flower every day. You just figure this out. And so you can wish anything. You can manifest anything. Obviously, this is going to work out for him. And the dad is gonna realize and remember that it's his son and know that it's his son because he can wish it to be so, and it will be. There's no obstacles in this guy's way. He's better than Superman, than any superhero you could imagine. And this is what he's chosen, to imprison his wife and let his mother continue to rot in prison until this argument with his dad. He was waiting for some type of confrontation. Who knows? There's no reason for his actions here. Ugh. Okay, we're almost done here, but I'm incensed by this kid. All right. When the king heard this, he rejoiced with all his heart. The queen was released from the prison. Oh my God, I can't get over that. So they never believed her. And she was in prison the whole time. And the faithful Lisa became the prince's wife. She was basically his wife already. The godless gardener was compelled to remain a poodle for the rest of his life, and was often kicked by the servants when he lay underneath the table. The end. That's the end. The last line is about them kicking a dog. Granted, it's like a human that became it doesn't feel great. It doesn't feel super good. Just put him in prison. By and large, being a poodle would be pretty nice. Like, you're still a poodle that's owned by royalty. Just gets kicked occasionally. I feel like the mother got off way worse than that. Even. Possibly. Probably? I think so. And Lisa's for sure traumatized by the ordeal with the flower. That can't feel good. No motivation. This for someone, he's a dummy. For someone who can do literally anything, why would you just go become a hunter? I mean, he wanted to impress his dad, I guess, but at the cost of like losing the respect of Lisa. Again, only character with a name. And, oh my God, terrible decisions all around. I just feel awful for the mom here. And Lisa. But especially the mom. From her perspective, she was just going for a nice walk with her baby child in the garden. She's like, oh, look, our gardener's coming to say hello. And the gardener grabs her baby, smears her mouth in blood, yells that she ate the baby, I guess in like one gulp, and then somehow manages to run away with the baby. How did he get away? How the hell? There's no way he would get away. There's no way that plan works. And then the mom's just like, no, he took the baby. I didn't eat our son. That's insane. Why would I do that, King? Come on. And then no one believed her. They believed this random gardener who then, like, probably was rewarded. Clearly, at least got to keep his job for the remainder. What was his plan? He's like, I'm going to use this child for my benefit, and then sent him away for at least like 15 to 20 years. What was his plan? When was he going to like come back and make his move? You know? Because the forester is who the child would think is his dad and would be like loyal to, not this like random guy. Because maybe he and the forester were like in on it together. Still, we'd never get an answer on what happens to the forester. Because the forester isn't necessarily... No, he's evil. He's for sure evil to accept like a child. Because Lisa knew the truth, so the forester must have known the truth. So the forester is definitely evil and definitely got off with zero consequences. He's just still kicking it, hunting stuff. Probably confused about where that kid and his daughter went. It's probably like, they liked each other. They probably ran off together to be in love. Wouldn't have imagined that his daughter was like a flower for heavy portions of the day for who knows how long. It doesn't say how long that happens. That is hell. That is a living hell, being trapped as a very vulnerable plant. Anything could happen to that flower. If someone just happened. I mean, they broke in. They could have messed up they could have crushed the flower when the other hunters broke in. This is horrifying. This is a hellscape. This is a terrifying world in this story that I don't want to live in. The king is a whimsical, impulsive, idiot monster who makes terrible decisions. The poor old man, we don't know what happened to him. He just gave this kid insane magic powers and just bailed, and I guess watched the fallout, watched the chaos ensue in the aftermath. This isn't a good ending. Nothing good happened in this story. Nothing good happened in this story. But I guess like the family was reunited, but the mom is like super traumatized. Lisa, who knows what the after effects of being a flower most of the day for weeks or months is, what that does to your psychology. And the boy kind of seems a little insane, right? Like, why is he doing the stuff he's doing? I guess he takes after his father in that capacity. So this is a horribly traumatized family. Kicking a dog. That's where we're at. That's where we've ended up. A boy with insane magic powers, a king who has no like perspective or grip on reality and sound decision making, and two women who have been terribly mistreated and don't seem to really be getting any benefit from any of this whatsoever. So yeah, that's where the Carnation has left us. I don't know what the moral is. There's definitely no moral to this. What moral are you supposed to take from this? Anyway, I'm going to adapt this thing into something. We'll find out what. Come on back after the break. And welcome back. All right, I've got an adaptation here. It ended up being a lot longer than I expected it to be. I got pretty into this, actually. And gonna have to, pardon me if you're watching this on video, I'm gonna have to consult my notes quite often with this, because it ended up being kind of detailed in terms of, I mean, I usually make it quite detailed, but usually I can kind of work within remember the general guidelines, is just kind of run through it. But there's kind of a lot of detail here, so pardon me if I'm looking off screen a little bit. Check my notes here. But so this one, it's going to be a series. It's going to be a Netflix series, I feel like. HBO, they're more like, high-quality, character-driven fantasy. Netflix is more just kind of like poorly thought-out fantasy, like aimed at young adults and kind of clunky fantasy, if I'm being honest. They have some good fantasy shows. They occasionally they'll nail it, but gotta be honest, by and large, not impressed with with Netflix's fantasy offerings. Not very grounded, not very fleshed out in a character sense and motivation sense. Just kind of stumble along. Anyway, I'm getting distracted here talking about my issues with Netflix's fantasy offerings, but this one's gonna be a series. That's the gist here. Well, you know what? Actually, I'm not going to make it fantasy. It's not going to be fantasy. We're going to start with a young couple living in rural, it's a tricky word, Wisconsin. Went to University of Wisconsin. It's got a soft spot in my heart. And the couple will be played by Jesse Plemons. He's a fantastic actor. Let's say Kirsten Dunst, his real-life wife. It's going to be his wife in the show, and they live on a farm. They make a small but decent living, humble background, and they have a son, and they don't have much extended family. Their parents have passed on, and Kirsten Dunst says, "Don't you have an uncle who lives in New York and is quite well off?" And Jesse says, "I haven't spoken with him in years. He went off to Wall Street, got super rich." Just crazy rich, really, like insanely 1%, obscenely wealthy rich. And Kirsten says, well, this baby needs a godfather, and I think it should be someone in the family. So let's reach out to good old Uncle Jesse Plemons. And they do, and the uncle shows up in a private plane, a limousine, and he's played by Jeff Bridges. Just in a suit, slicked back hair, looking all fancy. And he's like, it's fantastic to see you both. I miss your father dearly, and it's an honor to be the godfather of your baby boy. And godfather Jeff Bridges, he sets up a trust for this baby with millions and millions of dollars, crazy amount of money, and he'll inherit it in his 20s when the baby boy gets just somewhere in his like mid-20s, let's say. And to do this, he has to go to the local regional bank, which is run by a man played by David Thewlis. David Thewlis, if you don't know who David Thewlis, the actor, is, he is incredible. You'd for sure recognize him. I think he plays the werewolf guy in Harry Potter. Remus, I think that's his name, Remus. He's also in Fargo as one of the most terrifying, perfectly, beautifully disgusting villains I've ever seen on screen. Fantastic. Love David Thewlis. And so he's the manager of this bank who's handling the trust set up for the baby boy. And this is the most money David Thewlis' character has ever seen. And so he devises a plan. And first, he kidnaps the baby in the middle of the night. And then just as Kirsten Dunst wakes up to realize that her baby's kidnapped, the police show up and they arrest her for murdering her child. And also for financial fraud in connection with their farm, which, of course, all of that David Thewlis framed her for. And so then his bank takes control of the farm, and as a result of all the legal ramifications of the fraud, Jesse Plemons, he has no money, and he's essentially forced to continue working on the farm for the bank. And he asks Jeff Bridges for help, but Jeff Bridges says, as far as the law is concerned, you're a criminal, and your wife murdered your child. I'm the CEO of a big financial company. I can't do business with you. I can't associate with you anymore. I'm so sorry. I know you say you're innocent, but there's nothing I can do to help. And so poor Jesse Plemons, he has no choice but to work the farm on his lonesome. He's totally isolated and powerless, with no resources or ability to leave to go try and find his son or help his imprisoned wife. He doesn't really know what happened. He doesn't know if Kirsten Dunst, he doesn't think she murdered their son, but he doesn't know for sure. He's kind of in this, like, because of all the legal issues and the fraud and the crime, and David Thewlis is dragging all of this through the legal system, of course. He's kind of like forced Jesse Plemons doesn't know this. He thinks it's just, he doesn't know that David Thewlis is behind all of this. He just doesn't know what's happening, but all of this has gone wrong, and he's trapped on this farm. And David Thewlis' plan is to wait until the boy comes of age and the trust is dissolved, and to then basically just take the money under the guise of making good on the fraud of the family farm, but really just take most of it for himself. And meanwhile, the son has been sent to live with a friend of David Thewlis in Chicago. And this friend is played by Ving Rhames. Because why not? Don't know why that came to mind, but Ving Rhames is the friend who's this cool guy who lives in Chicago. And he tells Ving Rhames that this boy is an orphan. And so Ving doesn't know. He doesn't know the truth. And he raises the boy alongside his own little girl, his own daughter. And now we jump ahead many years later. And the boy is grown up. And now he's played by Lucas Hedges. Go look up Lucas Hedges. He's great. He's done a lot of good stuff. And as far as he knows, he's an orphan. And he's occasionally visited by just an extended relative. Is he a relative? No, let's say he's supposedly like let's just say he's a friend of Ving Rhames. He doesn't know he's connected in any way to his past or his family. He thinks he's just a friend of his adopted father, Ving Rhames. Calls him Uncle David Thewlis. And he comes in to check on him every once in a while, but as far as he knows, just a friend of his adopted father, Ving Rhames. And now, Ving Rhames' daughter is played by Keke Palmer. She's great. She's great in everything. And the two of them, they become very close, really, just like as siblings, because that's what they are, really. In the folktale, they make them like a romantic couple, but they were raised basically as siblings in the original and the folktale, too. So it's weird that they ended up a couple, right? Because they for sure would see each other as like brother-sister. Basically, they were raised together. And so in this story, they're gonna see each other as siblings, and it's not gonna be real weird like it is in the folktale. And so, Lucas Hedges, he goes into finance because he feels like he's an orphan who's never really had anything of his own, and he wants to get rich and build a life for himself. And Keke Palmer, she goes into charity work, and specifically, charity work about fighting against human trafficking and finding missing persons. And so Lucas Hedges, he does very well, gets a job at a big financial services company in New York, and ultimately he meets the CEO of that company, who happens to be Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges, he takes a shine to this young go-getter, and he feels a kinship with him for some reason. He can't explain it, but he sees a spark in the young boy. And Lucas Hedges, he's a damn good analyst, so he works more and more closely with him. And one day, Jeff Bridges, he tells Lucas he's bringing him on a business trip to Chicago to assess a firm that they're planning on buying out and merging with. Not merging with, just straight up buying out and integrating into their big, giant umbrella parent company. And he brings Lucas along. No, I'm skipping a bit here. Oh, yeah. On this trip, Jeff Bridges says he's going to visit his nephew, because the nephew's wife is just recently out of jail, and they're on very hard times. And he brings Lucas along, and of course he takes him to the farm that's run by Jesse Plemons, and Kirsten Dunst is just out of prison. And both Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons, they're essentially just emotionally and psychologically just broken, just devastated by this whole horrible ordeal, because of course they are. And while they're there, Jesse Plemons, he gets a letter from the bank saying that the debt owed to the bank and all of the legal mess that's been trapped him there and engulfed his life for decades has finally been resolved, and the debt from the fraud that they owed to the bank is resolved, and now he owns the farm outright again, and they're in the clear. But he notices that the signature on this letter isn't David Thewlis. It's a new person, and this strikes him as odd, and he's like, oh, yeah, that bank manager, David Thewlis, he made sure that even when everything went wrong, that I was okay here, even though I was all alone, and he'd visit sometimes, and he'd chat to me. So it's odd that he wouldn't tell me this news himself. And it's very odd that he wouldn't tell me he was leaving his job. And so he points to a photo on the mantle, and it's him with another man who's David Thewlis, and Lucas. He looks at this and he sees this is the man he knew as Uncle David Thewlis. Oh, it's just getting very fun the more I say David Thewlis. And that's when they call out the resemblance. It's a weird connection. They call the resemblance of Lucas to Jesse, because there is actually a little bit of resemblance in real life, I feel like. And the age similarity of Lucas to what their son would be. And then Jeff Bridges, he kicks into action, and he gets his lawyers and his analysts to look through all the paperwork of the farm and the trust and everything that's happened since then, and since this all kicked off. And they do a DNA test, and in the season finale, the whole plan of David Thewlis is revealed, and there's an emotional reunion between Lucas and his parents. Kirsten Dunst, she's elated to be reunited with her son and to find out that he's okay, but of course devastated, because not only was she imprisoned for decades, but for the murder of a child, but she lost the experience of actually being Lucas's mom, and that's very sad. But it leaves the question, where is David Thewlis? He left his job at the bank right after getting all the money, and he disappeared. And that is season 2. That's right. Keke Palmer, she works in charity work, so just like her sister, she's well-versed in how people can be disappeared and all the illicit and illegal networks through which people move internationally under the radar. And so using Keke Palmer's knowledge and international network of people, combined with Jeff Bridges' money and influence, Lucas Hedges and his newfound parents, they go out to find David Thewlis and exact their revenge. And season 2 is just an international game of cat and mouse, and of course Ving Rhames makes a comeback too. There's a question of how much he really knew, and the hunt is on. There we go. Maybe Ving Rhames also has some like cool backstory where he's like special forces or something, and then can utilize that too. I would watch the hell out of this show. I would for sure watch this show. Actually, you know what? I don't want to give this to Netflix now. I would want to give this to like maybe AMC. I feel like they would do do a good job with it. That'd be cool as hell. Or HBO. Who knows? I'd give it to Netflix. Netflix does some cool stuff. Why not? Yeah. So yeah, there we go. I got way more into that. It got more detailed and not as like whimsical and fun as some of the other adaptations. But I think that would be decent. It'd be good. Anyway, that'll do it for this week's episode. I don't know if I'm gonna do week by week now. Maybe I'm gonna try and do more than one a week. Maybe I'll try and do 2 a week. We'll see. Let's see how it goes. But that'll do it for this episode of the ShadowBear Story Sessions. And next time we'll be getting into the Carpenter and the Turner. Figure out what Turner means. I mean, like making wool or thread or something like that. Isn't that turning? Isn't that what they call it when you make that? I don't know. Guess we'll find out. Or not. Maybe it'll have nothing to do with that. Sometimes they get real weird and random with it. Also, I do remember that was a pretty short, Carpenter and Turner, pretty short story. So maybe we'll have more than one. Who knows? We'll find out. Coming back next time for the Carpenter and the Turner. ShadowBear out. Is that a thing? Should I start saying that? ShadowBear out? I think I said a folk off the last time. Is that good? I need a sign out. Look, all the best shows have a sign off. I'll figure out a sign off one of these days. One of those might work. ShadowBear out, folk off, any of those. Regardless, this is dragging on. See you later. Bye-bye.